Hello, in this video, I'm going to be talking about social learning theory slash planned happenstance, as well as social cognitive career theory. So these models, these career development theories are meant to kind of orient counselors and helping professionals to like how to support clients who are facing career issues. So the first that I want to talk about with social learning theory, that according to social learning theory, and then planned happenstance, which is a model of career development, is they basically hold the position that career development is a learning saturated process. That what we've learned previously in our lives is going to influence the career development process. Then the career development process has key tasks of development in it. And then there's lifelong learning, just it's not just that we're making a one-time career decision, it's that there's career development is a developmental process that requires learning throughout that developmental sequence. So throughout life. So several learning principles are emphasized in this model. So they go from genetic influences to environmental conditions and events to learning experience and then task approach skills. So the genetic influences, and once again, this is coming from the Sharp 2013 text on chapter 13. And it really emphasizing Krumboltz perceptions and experience in this model. So the genetic influences has to do with, okay, so what is my inheritance? What's the legacy that I'm receiving? Biologically, socially, etc. So we're receiving a context. Heidegger talked about how we're thrown into the world. So it's like we're just thrown into the world with a certain context and we make sense of it based on where we are placed and thrown and the legacies that we received. And the legacy could be constructive and positive and helpful, as well as, negative, deprecating, etc. So, so these genetic influences are going to significantly impact how we go about learning processes. So the context that we're in is going to impact our genetic influence and what is activated genetically. So that's kind of the first step, is that there's this insight into, okay, what are these genetic influences is one of the first principles. Then I've kind of already alluded to this, but those environmental conditions and events. So there could be social conditions. So that could be the larger macro level social cultural experiences that are surfacing. It could be the micro of like parents and key figures or caretakers, caregivers. That's part of the environmental conditions and events that impact client learning. And then also these genetic legacies and inheritance that we receive are then activated and impacted by environmental conditions, which leads to, that's how we learn, is the intersection of those according to this approach. Then learning experiences. In the Scharf text on page 356, it talks about how career preferences are a result of an individual's prior learning experiences. So learning is, as I said at the start, it's the career development process saturated in learning according to this, philosophy. So what we come to find as motivating or meaningful or interesting or connected to our personality is based on previous learning. What have we learned about ourselves and about the world of work around us and where we fit together? So then all these learning experiences then lead to how we approach tasks. So the task approach skills. As Scharf put it, understanding how an individual approaches a task is critical to career decision making. For the purpose of this chapter, task approach skills include goal setting, values clarification, generating alternatives, and obtaining occupational information. So those are a few of those key tasks in the developmental process. Okay, so how do we go about setting a career goal? How do we go about clarifying our values, generating alternatives if the ideal pathway or the first pathway doesn't play out how we thought? So we're always learning and relearning, based on, we hit a fork in the road where we thought things were going to play out, didn't work out well, so we have to reorient. So those are some of the key principles behind this learning-based approach to career development. But then John Krumboltz developed, let me pull it up here. the happenstance learning theory. So planned happenstance is what it's often referred to. So planned happenstance, once again, is very learning based. But so a few of the key principles that come from the Scharf text, that there's several key goals, four key goals according to Scharf in this model. So number one, that the client needs to learn to take actions to achieve more satisfying career and personal lives, not to make a single career decision. That's from page 364. So there's this learning to act, and not just act once, not to just say, okay, here's the career decision that I'm making, but this career process and this personal process. How can I live in a satisfying way in my personal and professional life? How can I learn what that takes? So that's the key. One of the key goals is that each client learns that for themselves. And number two, another key principle is that career assessments might be used, but their goal is not to make a career decision, not to match the person with an environment. The goal is to learn. So career assessments are an avenue to stimulate learning. And that's absolutely been the truth in my experience as a career counselor, is doing career assessments. That's usually, even if clients like find like on the list of careers that might be a good fit, they resonate with it, they might pursue that pathway, but it didn't necessarily give them the answer. They learned through that process. They learned more about, oh, here's who I am, and here's why this might be a good fit. And now I need to learn more about this profession and take classes and, do occupational interviews and job shadow, et cetera, to learn more. So number two, career assessments are used for learning. Number three, I think, is really central to planned happenstance. So it's learning to act to create beneficial unplanned events. So that might sound weird, of like, how can you plan on unplanned events or creating beneficial unplanned events? So one example of this is John Krumboltz in his own career development. He was kind of confused in college, not sure what to do, but I think it was either he was working or playing at this tennis facility, and he started just playing with another guy playing tennis, and it turned out to be a psychology professor. And so then he started talking with him more, and he learned more about psychology and went and pursued that psychology route in his program. So I think he just started kind of chatting about being a college student, not sure what to do, and they just connected, and he learned more about psychology and ended up being a really good fit. So we just learned that, like, okay, this was just a chance event that we ran into each other and started talking about this, and it led to a significant and really important shift in his career path. So a lot of his model is about how can we teach clients to, teach them about planned happenstance, that we're always in circumstances, but we can be more intentional. So maybe we plan, if we're unsure, if we're thinking about going into the counseling field, then you go to and this may be during undergrad or whatever, before you're in the field, you go to a conference. So it's like, okay, that's putting yourself in the context to be able to have these unplanned connections and events and learning processes. And it's always being willing to, to kind of put yourself out there, to take risks, which I'll talk about in a moment, but take risks to try things out and to put yourself in environments where you can learn and benefit. And I guess then the last principle and last goal principle is that success in counseling isn't based on what happens in counseling, but what happens outside of counseling. So the accomplishments outside. So this is a very action-oriented approach. So learning based, but then learning based on acting and learning through behaviors, not just insight and thinking about something. So also in the Scharf text, it talks about how this model requires values or dispositions of curiosity, persistence, flexibility, optimism, and risk-taking. So these five key kind of principles or dispositions are really important. That, like, okay, so I remain curious, I remain open to the world, and I don't stop when it's hard or when there's a door closed. It's just like that I need to learn something from it. So I'll keep going. I'll be flexible. I'll adapt. I'll be optimistic that it'll play out okay. And I think the risk-taking is really important. So like we take risks to try out new things, to place ourselves in situations where we can have we can plan happenstance based on the name of the approach. So those are a few thoughts about planned happenstance and social learning theory. But now I'm going to shift over to social cognitive career theory. So social cognitive career theory has there's a big depth to what social cognitive career theory is, and the learning models based on it, or based under it. It's based on a lot of Bandura's work on social cognitive theory in general. But we're going to discuss the application to career theory, so social cognitive career theory. So there's four main principles that I'm going to talk about. It's self-efficacy, outcome expectations, goals, and then contextual factors. So these are, four of the key principles of social cognitive career theory. So self-efficacy, as talked about in Scharf on page 377, and Scharf is actually quoting Bandura, is self-efficacy relates to people's judgments of their capabilities to organize and execute courses of action required to attain designated types of performances. I guess in another way, it's just like my belief in myself to be able to do something. Can I achieve something? And what experiences in my life have led me to have a high sense of self-efficacy that I can achieve, I can, if I can attain the performances that I'm, that I want to pursue. So that relates to career development. Like, obviously, if there's a low sense of self-efficacy that I can't achieve what's before me, that my experiences and lived experiences and learning experiences have led me to believe that I will come up short, I'll fail, I won't do it. That's where a lot of career counseling or counseling for career issues could relate to self-efficacy. It's like helping clients restructure their self-efficacy, helping them engage in experiences to where they can have that bolstered, have that raised, and their appraisal of who they are and what they can achieve. Because obviously, if there's no anticipation of success, then there's not going to be the motivation to continue. This is then connected to outcome expectations, as will make sense in a moment. So outcome expectations are basically just like the probability of, or estimating the probability of an outcome. So if I expect that an outcome will turn out well because I believe in myself to be able to achieve self-efficacy, then the outcome expectations are going to be higher. Or I don't know if higher is the right way of wording it, but I guess for simplicity's sake, like if I have a high sense of outcome expectation, that means I believe that the outcome is going to turn out favorably or according to my beliefs. Obviously, low outcome expectations is that I won't be able to pursue and have that outcome. I have a low expectation that it will be an outcome a successful outcome. So one example of this, I was doing career counseling with a client, and the client brought up how, just the world was very important to this client. And she talked about how, climate change was really important to her, and like the impact of climate change on like the natural world. So the plant life as well as animals, that no one was looking out for animals. No one was really looking out for the earth, and no consistent larger group was. So it's really important to her to have that lens and that helping perspective. But she's also very kind of depressed about the state of the world and the state of that these habitats are just being destroyed and these animals are being impacted and nothing's really changing significantly. So at one point she was talking about carbon footprints. And then we were just kind of exploring and discussing how the carbon footprints are they're so high and so just crushing. It's almost like they're stamping on the environment, destroying it. So at one point she said that, maybe the best thing to do is to remove her footprint. And I might have just seen it as like, okay, she just wants to get very green, but no, like I checked in there, and my vibe was that it was actually about suicide. That she was saying that one way that she could remove her footprint from stamping out the world would be to kill herself. And I kind of reflect that back, and she's like, yeah, that's what she was thinking of. So and I guess the reason why I'm bringing this up with outcome expectations is she had a very low expectation that her career path at that point would lead to anything beneficial, that the outcome of actually helping lower the carbon footprint was possible. So we were able to kind of work on that and work through that. And she kind of came to the point where it's like, okay, my influence, my footprint can make a bigger difference, or that's the belief and the hope the expectancy was there, that like hope was increased there. So for this client, yeah, that was a big part of her process, was figuring out how can I have hope? How can I look at the outcomes, and that my work won't fix everything, but it's a step in an important direction. So self-efficacy beliefs and outcome expectations then lead to the development of goals. So if we believe in ourselves that we can, like, that we're capable of achieving, and then we expect the outcomes to turn out favorably, then we create goals based on those, based on those beliefs. And those goals are likely going to be based on our interests and a sense of meaning. And so that's kind of the development of goals. But all of this process, the self-efficacy beliefs, the outcome expectations, the goals, they're all based and situated in a contextual climate, in a cultural climate. So contextual factors can be barriers as well as supports. So for example, I kind of view some of the barriers as, like, I was thinking of some PhD students in counselor education who, it's almost like they are cultural trailblazers. So that might be putting an optimistic spin to it, but like, I talked with some Black men who went through a PhD program, and they talked about how they could tell that program hadn't really had any Black men before in their program. So they were trailblazers, meaning that it's almost like the pathway before them was full of trees, shrubbery, just tall grass, and they had to be the ones kind of blazing the trail. Because no one from their lived experience had really walked that path at that unique place. So that was a barrier. But other people who go into PhD programs, the path has already been blazed, the trail's already been cleared, the shrubbery's already to the side. Maybe there's even like a gravel trail just to walk on really smoothly, so that the supports are already there to make that pathway easier and clearer. So that's, once again, this isn't an exhaustive description of the contextual factor influence, but hopefully that metaphor kind of gives some ideas that there can be these obstacles that are just in the road. So that could be due to social identities of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, that those can be barriers, but then there can also be supports, like, who are our supports? Maybe a certain system is more supportive than others, and like helping see the uniqueness of each person and honoring that, and trying to foster that and to encourage and to prize that uniqueness. So those are a few of the key principles from social cognitive career theory, that the career development process is going to be situated in a contextual environment. And that contextual environment is also going to then play into self-efficacy beliefs, outcome expectations, and therefore the goals that clients make. So this can be kind of a conceptual map to make sense of both of these approaches, the social learning theory, planned happenstance, and social cognitive career theory. These can be conceptual maps for the counselor to make sense of the learning process for the client, and then kind of give some ideas into, how to support the client through their process. Especially the planned happenstance process can be a bit more of a directive too. There can be kind of this teaching orientation, or kind of this psychoeducational role of the counselor to teach these principles of planned happenstance, of learning process, of taking risks, but then also using the counseling skills to help the client make the ultimate choice of what they choose to do, how they choose to see the world. So anyways, those are a few principles and topics to consider in these models, and I'd be happy to chat more with you and see comments about this. So looking forward to it.